Mhm.
But I was asked to, I'm preaching.
I look cute today.
I'm preaching for the Portland church on Sunday, and this is kind of part of it. So it gives me a little practice run.
Okay.
Okay, so it's for my
Okay.
benefit, not for you. Nobody will ever see it, so you can make all sorts of faces you want to, Victoria.
Come on, Octavia.
Anyway, let's do a quick prayer. Let's jump in. Victoria, can you pray for us as you were first on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Father God, thank you so much for this time. As usual, you are an amazing God. You are so, so good to us. You are so wonderful and over gracious because we are undeserving. God, thank you for these beautiful, wonderful women. I pray that we give each other insight, we help each other, we encourage one another, and we listen to one another. And most of all, we listen to your word. We soak it all in, and then it makes changes in our lives that last forever. And it's in your son's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm excited about this. This is not what I'm preaching on Sunday. This is just part of some of my thinking on some stuff. But I've been studying it all week, and it's really exciting. At least I think so, and hopefully y'all think so too. But we're going to be talking about Haman. Who is Haman? We're going to the book of Esther. So flip over to Esther 3, and we're going to talk a little bit about Haman, the main man, Haman. Hey, G.
Hey, just popped in to say I'm actually moving right now, driving out to Walnut Creek, so I won't be on tonight.
Okay.
Plans changed, so now we're driving out now.
Yeah, you're moving out now. All right. Well, thank you for popping in.
Yeah.
Drive
Bridget said
safely.
she's popping in soon. Bye, guys.
Okay.
Love you.
Be careful. Love you too. Bye, Reg.
Bye. Didn't they just move there?
Well, not just, but yeah. You've been out of touch because you haven't been around us because of COVID and like forever. So they've been here a little bit longer than you think.
Okay.
But they have some great stuff going on. So there's some movement happening.
Well, there you go.
He's got a great job. And so they're going to be doing some shifting. We'll talk about it later. Okay. I want to get into Haman. All right. So over in Esther, we're going to start in chapter 3. But tell me, what do we know about Haman? Ever heard the name Haman?
Ooh.
He loves gallows.
Haman.
He likes to hang people.
He
loves
gallows.
them bodies hanging from a tree. Sorry. That was a bad joke, but I could
like that power.
It's okay. I laughed anyway. Yes, whenever we go to the book of Esther, our main characters are whom? Who's the main characters all in Esther?
Nebuchadnezzar? My bad.
No, Mordecai.
Mordecai.
Mordecai. Esther. The
Esther.
Jews, Haman.
And King Xerxes.
Mordecai's the uncle, right?
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, you got mostly the main characters. You know, you think Esther and, you know, the queen and for such a time as this and all that good warm fuzzy stuff. And Mordecai, good guy, you know, comes in, saves the day. When we think about Haman, good guy, bad guy, what do we know about him? Other than the gallows, he likes to be, he likes killing people. Anything else? What was that?
Seeking power.
Seeking power. Did I hear liar?
He's a liar and a cheat.
He's a liar and a cheat. Poor Haman. Poor Haman. Anything else about him?
He liked that power.
He wanted honor.
Power, honor.
Honor, and yeah. Oh.
Yeah. A lot of stuff up in there. All right. We're going to look at him. Hopefully after today, we're going to see him in a slightly different light. Just like we came to see Thomas in a slightly different light, right? So we're going to try to look beyond what we've come to know about him. Now, what we come to know is true, but let's look a little bit deeper and see what else we can find on him. Hey, Dee, we're over in the book of Esther, chapter 3.
Okay, thanks.
What about Haman?
No, we're talking about Haman.
That was a bad joke.
Yes, that's why we corrected. Haman. All right. So we're going to be looking at Haman, and we're going to find out as much as we can about him. So Esther chapter 3, verse 1 through 6. Who wants to read? There are a couple of Old Testament words, names in there, but, you know, just say the first letter and move on.
I can read it.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. After these things, King Ahasuerus, which is King Xerxes, promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and established his authority over all the officials who were with him. All the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and honored and paid homage to Haman, for this is what the king had commanded in regard to him. But Mordecai, a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, neither bowed down nor paid homage to him. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why are you disregarding the king's command?" Now it happened when they had spoken to him day after day and he would not listen to him, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's reason would stand or be valid, for he had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage to him, he was furious. But he disdained laying hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him who the people of Mordecai were, his nationality. So Haman determined to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, who lived throughout the kingdom of King Xerxes.
All right. So what do we see? Give me as kind of a summary. What's happening?
He ain't happy.
Yeah, but give me a summary. Don't just say he ain't happy. What did we just read? And then we're going to dive and unwrap it a little bit.
Well, it's almost like a disrespect, and it's not like he earned that respect. He was given to by the king, but Mordecai just didn't care.
Okay.
I'm not doing it, and it's not like he was hiding.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, Mordecai was a Jew, and it was forbidden for a Jew to bow down to any person or thing other than God. A graven image, a statue, or anything like that. He was obeying the law, which is in the Torah. So I'm going in defense of Mordecai.
Okay. Okay. All right. We look at Haman. This was a man of high stature, right? It wasn't like he was a nobody. This man was literally second in command. He was higher than the queen. He was one step beneath the king. So the king had promoted him to such a high place, to high honor, that he could have been the king junior would be his position. So why did it bother him so much that this man, Mordecai, would not bow down?
Ego.
Yeah. Anything else? Why would he be so upset? Just flat out ego and power hungry. Right? Narcissism. You look at this, you look in verse 2, it says, all the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to him. So that would be everybody. If everywhere you went, people bowed down and went, oh, there's Nikki. Let's just bow down. I mean, that's got to feel like, whoa. And then imagine one little person not doing it. And that upsets you so much. So my question is, why did that upset him so much? When he's got a whole nation of people falling at his feet, one person was able to get underneath his skin. Do you think it's just?
Who I am?
Well, wait, I heard somebody, then I saw Nikki's mouth move. So, Nikki, what were you saying?
I was just thinking maybe he didn't feel like it was validated, like by everyone.
Okay. Yeah. Who was that speaking? Victoria, was that you?
I just said, like, do you know who I am? Like, everybody bows down to me. Everybody. Yeah. And you're a nobody, so you should totally bow down to me.
Right. Right.
Or maybe because Mordecai was a Jew and Haman knew that, And, you know, he felt like, yeah, everybody else is bowing down because that's what they do, you know, but here is this Jew with some values that don't match mine.
Right.
How dare he come to my place?
Yeah, we're gonna go down that road. Look at this. This is very interesting. In verse, let me see, wait. Verse 5, when Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. So he saw him, got ticked off. This man's not bowing down. But what's interesting is the next verse. Look at the next verse. Yet, having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. So this was not just about Mordecai, right? He could have struck down that one dude who refused to bow and then moved on. But this wasn't about that. So there was something else going on. It says instead, he looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews. So I look at this, I titled this one, Haman, a man stuck in trauma. And we're going to go back and look at what kind of trauma is he stuck in. God has raised him to this high position. So whatever he had come from really didn't matter anymore. He's in second to the king. So God can raise us up out of stuff and put us at a level that we don't even deserve to be in. But if somebody triggers our trauma, stuff starts to happen, right? That's what we're going to see with Haman. Let's look at what his trauma is. Go over to 1 Samuel. We'll come back to Esther. We'll go to 1 Samuel, chapter 15. If I can get somebody to read 7 through 9. There's a couple of strange words, so don't be afraid.
You said 15, BJ?
Chapter 15, verse 7 through 9.
I can read it.
Okay.
Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, to the east of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed.
Okay.
Then the word, oh, my bad.
That's good. That's okay. Let's break it down a little bit. Saul was a Jew, the Israelites. And who did he attack and destroy, or try to destroy?
The Amalekites.
Haman's people.
Yeah.
Haman's people. So we're going back in history now. So you've got these Jews. They wiped out, or at least they attempted to annihilate Haman's people. So these people, the Amalekites, they were wealthy. They had everything, and everything was taken away from them. So here you got little Haman. Whatever his age was, we do not know. Now, he'd heard all these stories about how great his people used to be, but he wasn't living that because his people had been pretty much destroyed. So now he's raised to power, and you would think all of that would be behind him.
Oh, no.
But when that one Jew refused to bow, what happened?
Middle school came back.
Middle school came back. It all triggered. We've got to look at what's triggering us. When things are left undealt with, it takes the slightest thing to trigger us. And it can rob us of so much. And we're going to look at what it robbed Haman of. He could have been king, but how did he end up? We're going to read it. Don't tell me. We're going to read it. We're going to read it. But I want us to see he wasn't just power hungry. He wasn't just an egomaniac. He was. But that's kind of what we've summed him up to be. When we read the story of Esther and we sum it up, we've got sweet, beautiful Esther. We've got innocent, lovely Mordecai, and we have evil Haman. Again, we're in the process of labeling people and making it impossible for them to break out of those labels. No one is one thing only. We know it intellectually, but yet once we see that side of someone, we slap it on them and we make it almost impossible for them to come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, if you already have trauma, you already feel a certain way about yourself when you deal with that particular area, right? What are some things you think Haman probably could have felt about himself, coming from this wealthy people, then having these people totally wiped out? The only reason he's still there was because they disobeyed God and they kept the king. Otherwise, that whole nation would have been wiped out. So they pretty much became, if we want to look in terms of us, the slaves and the slave owners. You look at Black Wall Street. We look at, there's so much history with Black America that has been almost completely wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ask, why are these people angry?
Mm.
Why are these people still carrying stuff around? Look at what's going on with Haman. It's very, very real. It's alive. So he's got all this rich, rich, rich history that he's heard about, but has never lived. He's been able to rise above it, but I'm sure a lot of his people have not.
Mm-hmm.
So think about, tell me, what do you think this man, what's some deeper feelings this man could be carrying around?
Unworthiness, unlovable,
Hatred, revenge.
dirty,
Yes.
ugly, not
Yes.
human.
Listen to all of that. When we look at that, we realize this man, Haman, that we've all just summed up to be power hungry. There's so much more underneath him. If we can go underneath it and understand it, empathize with it, we can kind of see, okay, I see why he's here. Now let's see if we can get him out of it. It's so funny how history, what was that? Somebody was saying something.
I was going to say, I don't really understand the history then. So King Xerxes is not a part of Haman's people?
Cindy, you're my history buff. Do you want to explain the history behind it all?
Sure.
Okay. Esther chapter 1, you see King Xerxes, and you see he has Queen Vashti. He was one of the most influential, wealthiest Persian kings. This came way later. And what happened here with King Agag, if you notice, Haman's part of the Agagites, he was a descendant of that king because he's the only one that they let live. Of course, disobeying God. You know, they kept some of the sheep, the oxen, they were supposed to destroy everything. But instead, they left one guy alive, and he fathered an entire group of people that would become a thorn in their sides, just like the Ammonites, the Moabites, etc. So this guy's the only survivor, however many generations. So I look at him kind of like the mafia. It's payback time. I got some power, okay?
Yes.
I'm in the White House.
Right.
I'm going to make you pay because I got the military, I got the CIA, I got the FDA, I got the CDC, I got everybody in 3 or more letters that I can go after.
3 or more letters. But yeah, that is so true. That everything she's saying, you can see, you can almost map out the trauma in this man's life. This is where my family, my people, my line of people, we should be in the position that the Israelites are now in. There was always a constant battle between the Jews and these people. You see it throughout the Bible. They're constantly fighting, constantly fighting, constantly fighting. And God, being on the side of the Israelites, gave them a very specific command: wipe them out. kill everybody, everything. But because they disobeyed God and left the king, which is Cindy is saying, alive, then we see out of that came Haman. His line came out of that disobedience. So they're still fighting one another because they refused to be obedient to God way back when. So now when we come up against Haman and Mordecai, it's still that same battle. Now we just have individual names attached to it. Haman, he's representing the Amalekites. Mordecai, you represent the Israelites. And this battle is still in existence.
But they're all under Persia right now.
Yes, they're all under Persia right now. King Xerxes, Persian. Yes.
Okay.
And that's how he was able to be raised to such a high position. If they were underneath the Israelites, he probably would not have been second in command, but they were under the Persians. So that elevated him to a high position. So now he's got this power, and this one Jew decides to defy him. And he's like, ha, 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 I'm taking down all your people. I got a
so
plan.
Familiar right now.
How does it sound familiar? Because I do want us to see this is nothing new. What do we see that's similar?
Octavia.
Huh?
What were you going to say, Octavia?
It just sounds familiar. I'm not trying to be political or hurt anybody's feelings, but it sounds like Trump, the middle schooler in the office right now, not being a grown man, but taking out all of his childhood woes. And when someone crosses him or he doesn't like someone, instead of just being the adult and moving on, he wants revenge. And he does have all the 3-letter names behind him. And he has done all these things to hurt people, and all because, not because it's what's good for the country, but because it's good for his ego.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I want us to see what trauma does to us. We're just going to look at Haman, and I want us to see what undealt with trauma does in our lives. God has elevated each and every one of us to a certain place, and we don't know where he's taken us beyond this. With Haman, it just happened to be second in command. But one of the things, look at verse 1. Somebody just read verse 1, and I'll point out.
Are we back in Esther?
I'm sorry. We are back in Esther. Thank you. My bad. I just took us to Kings so that we could see that there was a vicious war constantly between these two people.
So verse 1
We're
of 3.
back in Esther chapter 3, just verse 1.
Okay. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of those people, and those people, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles.
All right. So what did we learn? What took place in verse 1? Just in verse 1.
Haman got promoted over everybody.
Over everybody. Everybody, except for the king himself. But undealt with trauma, look at what it did with Haman. It kept him from seeing just how blessed he was.
Blessed he was, yeah.
This man came from a group of people that had been pretty much, with the exception of one, completely wiped out, to all of a sudden, number 2 man. Is that God blessing, or is that not the blessing of God?
And it sounds like, who is it that couldn't see the promised land? They got all the way there.
Moses.
And couldn't see it because he was silly.
Temper. He lost his temper.
So it's like you get there, he still loves you, you're awesome. It's like when you tell your kids, if you're good, we'll go get ice cream, and if you're really good, you can have 2 scoops. But they're only kind of good, so when you get there, you only give them a scoop. So
but I want us to see that God, this story is not just about Mordecai and Esther. We've made it a story about Mordecai and Esther, which obviously it's the overriding theme. But I want us to see that God was working even in Haman's life the villain, because God brought him from almost total extinction to man number 2, promoted, elevated by the king. But yet, because he had undealt with trauma, he was blinded to the blessing in his life. We've got to look and go, what am I blinded to? Because I have other stuff going on. Because one person walked in the room that set me off. And I lost my cool, right? One person in the room.
I hate her.
Only takes one. Only takes one.
Only one.
Only takes one. I'm going to have
That's a
somebody.
shame, too.
I want somebody to turn. I don't want everybody to turn, just one person. One person turn and read one verse. Psalms 23, verse 5. Any one person, run and grab that for us. But don't lose Esther, because we're going to go back to it. That's why I just wanted one person to go, but that's okay. Everybody go.
Oh, well, nobody said who was going, so you know.
That's true.
All right. Psalm 23, verse 5.
I'm there.
All right. Okay, you go.
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over.
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my what?
Enemies.
In the presence of my what?
Them people I can't stand.
Look at this. God did not remove the enemies and prepare a table. He says, I'm going to prepare a table for you, but it's going to be in the presence of your enemies. Why? God, why don't you just move them out of the way? Let me sit and eat in peace.
No, You know, watch me eat.
God had prepared a table for Haman, but it was in the presence of his enemy. Mordecai was there. But because it triggered him, he was blinded to all the blessing. He was blinded to the fact that he had a table set before him by the king. And all he saw was that one Jew that would not bow. Look at what we do. When we have undealt with trauma, it blinds us to what we've been blessed with. Because God does not remove those enemies. He prepares a table right there in the middle of them to see how you're going to deal with it. Are you going to get up and walk away from your blessing because your enemy's here? Or are you going to fix your eyes on the blessing? That's what we're seeing happening with Haman. Second thing we see, verse 2. Sorry, back in Esther. Sorry, I told you we're going to go back. Somebody read just verse 2. Chapter 3, verse 2.
All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by. For so the king had commanded, but Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect.
Okay. Yes. But before we got to that, all these people, again, are bowing down. But was he satisfied?
Never gonna be satisfied.
Trauma, it robs us of satisfaction. He should have been satisfied, if you think about it.
Yeah.
All these people bowing down. They're all ready to kiss his feet. But he was not satisfied because of one man triggered something in him. This is what I found super interesting. I love this stuff. Mordecai, the name Mordecai means magnificent. He was going to be magnificent. He's somebody magnificent. The name, I'm sorry, I messed up. The name Haman means magnificent. The name Mordecai means little man.
Ooh, really?
Little man.
Dang.
Look at that. God named him even in the midst of this. He's saying, I've raised you up, Haman. I'm making you magnificent. But then I'm going to put one little man in your path. What are you going to do with it? His trauma rose up.
Yeah.
So Mr. Magnificent got tripped up by little man Mordecai
Whoop.
because
Little
he
man.
got caught up in his feelings. When we
No.
get caught up in our feelings, what happens? Cindy, what were you going to say?
If you look at the scriptures right before chapter 3, like 21 to 23 in chapter 2,
Yeah.
little dude, foiled a plot by two guys to kill King Xerxes. It was recorded.
Right.
And somebody had to know about that.
Right.
Okay, and I know that's going to factor in later on. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I can see that undealt with trauma, it's that one last little bit that you didn't surrender to God.
Yeah.
It comes back and bites you in the butt.
Yeah. It's like having a little pebble, a little rock or something in your shoe. It just keeps grinding at you. That little man, that's what it was for Haman. You would have thought it's not a big deal, but that one little thing was just, your people did something to my people, and you got to pay. Somebody's got to pay. You know, now we can look at history. We can look at history today, and people can go, well, it wasn't me. I wasn't even there thousands of years ago.
Still relevant.
Right? But you look at the impact of that trauma. Trauma can be passed on generation after generation after generation. Because of what happened to his people, they had been enslaved. Because of what happened to their people, they had lived beyond the poverty line. So all these things happened to Haman's people because of the things that Mordecai's people did. So you see the generational passing of trauma. So even after God had raised him to great heights, because he never dealt with the trauma was now dealing with him. So we can see how the first part of the trauma, it blinds us to the blessings. And then we see that it robbed him of his satisfaction. He wasn't satisfied with just everybody else bowing down. And then let's read that good juicy part that I think Cindy mentioned earlier. Chapter 7, verse 9. Let's see what happens to him.
It's not going to be good.
It's not. Actually, let's read all of that. Read 1 through 9 if somebody wants to take a big chunk.
I will.
We can break it up if we want to.
So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. On the second occasion, while they were drinking wine, the king again said to Esther, "Tell me what you want, Queen Esther. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it's half the kingdom." Queen Esther replied, "If I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I would remain quiet, for that would be too trivial of a matter to warrant disturbing the king." "Who would do such a thing?" King Xerxes demanded. Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you?" Esther replied, this wicked Haman, our adversary and our enemy." Haman grew pale with fright before the king and queen. Then the king jumped to his feet in a rage and went out into the palace garden. Haman, however, stayed behind to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he knew that the king intended to kill him. In despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining, just as the king was returning from the palace garden. The king exclaimed, "Will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes?" As soon as the king spoke, his attendants covered Haman's face, signaling his doom. Then Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, "Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai, the man who saved the king from assassination. Then impale Haman on it, the king ordered.
All right, what's happening? Do a recap, somebody. Tammy's eyes are big.
Happens when you don't deal with your stuff deals with you, and it impels you on a really big pole.
That was great.
It's funny because we just had that experience this weekend. Someone in my family that I love dearly, we experienced a trauma together, and we've been going through life, and we were at the grocery store on Saturday, I think. And I'm proud of myself because I'm usually the one in my family that holds on to trauma and then gets impaled with giant poles. But anyway, this time I had dealt with my feelings or whatever. So when this person came up to us, I was able to say hi. I don't have any conversation, but I can be cordial and say hi and keep it pushing, grab my French fries and keep going. Well, the other person in my family had a complete meltdown, and it broke my heart because I realized they're not over it. The trauma is still there, and it's still very sharp, and they were in denial of what they were feeling. They kept saying, no, I'm okay, but they had completely shut down. Like it was like we got home before they snapped out of it and realized, that they had let that one person ruin the rest of their day. So this is, deal with your stuff, because your stuff ain't got nothing but time to deal with you. And then you give your stuff to people, and then your stuff, like, you pass it around and it gets momentum. So then when your stuff come back to you, it's slapping you with what you had, but then it's slapping you with what you fed to other people because you haven't dealt with your stuff. So it's slapping you even harder. And that's why the pole got bigger. Who needs something that sharp and that big to stab somebody with? Nobody. But that's because he didn't, his anger and rage just made that pole bigger and sharper. So there you have it. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Have you ever talked about someone and just been and she and this and that and the other, and they walked in behind you?
Nope.
And then you get that feeling of busted, like
nope.
you're caught.
Can't
like
relate.
You know what I mean?
Nope.
That's kind of like how when he was big and he was like, oh no.
Yeah, can't relate to that.
Busted.
I talk about people in their face, so.
Right? I turn around, I'm like, did you hear that? Did you miss any? Do I need to repeat it?
But I wanted us to see, where was the hanging? Where was this gallows that he had set up?
In his yard.
Right outside of his house, right? It was outside. It said it was set up outside of his house. So when you look at this, the rage, everything that Esther described that happened to their people had happened also to Haman's people. It just repeated itself. That's why this vicious cycle was continuing to go on. When she talked about we had been sold and we had been destroyed and we had been killed and we've been annihilated. So even Esther's got some stuff, some trauma. And it's really the same trauma that Haman has. Now, we don't go on. We're assuming that she dealt with hers and her path went in a different way. But we're seeing the contrast. Same, different people, but the same trauma inside. But yet, it's interesting that here Haman dies right outside of his blessing. His home. God had given him this incredible position and place in life, and he dies outside of his blessing. If we don't deal with trauma, it derails us and it takes us off track of our blessing. God is trying to bless us. He's trying to take us somewhere. But if we get stuck in trauma, we end up dying outside of it, standing outside of it, looking, wondering, why didn't I get there? Why can't I go in? It's because we're stuck in trauma. So again, the question is, what trauma are you stuck in? What is it robbing you of? What blessings are you unable to see because your trauma is blocking the way? One great way of figuring it out is, if God prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemy, who is it I cannot sit amongst, be amongst, without feeling? We've got to look at that and go, God, there's a blessing in here somewhere. That means.
Ouch. I've been invited to go and see my coworkers. One of my coworkers is retiring, and this is the job that I lost. And she's having a going away celebration this Thursday. And the SVP that laid me off is the one that's throwing the party. And now with you saying that, this was like, ouch. That means I have to go, because I was going to try to come up with excuses. I'm not to go.
In your best suit and tallest heels.
Exactly. Ouch, BJ. Ouch.
Isn't it funny how God works? Now, I knew nothing about that.
How long you been sitting on that, D? Because you said nothing.
I could see her eyes. Every now and then her eyes would roll back.
I didn't even tell Octavia. Oh my gosh. Get out of my head.
Guess you're going now.
God doesn't want you to get stuck in your trauma. So that's that. You got a couple of days to pray and work it out.
Yes, ma'am.
But when we get stuck in our trauma, it robs us of blessings God's trying to shower our way. So take that for what it is. Figure out what you got to do with it. But that's where Malachi got stuck. God was blessing him, but then his trauma arose and he just went shut down. All the blessings kind of faded to black. And then that trauma rose up and the spotlight hit it. And then once that happened, that's all he could focus on. All he could see was Mordecai's people, Mordecai's people, Mordecai's people. I lost my mom and my dad because of Mordecai's people. I, had to live as a slave because of Mordecai. It's like, I'm sure there was a litany of things, a list of things going off in his head. And they all ended with Mordecai's people. So we've got to look and go, God, what is my trauma? What's holding me? What's blocking me from my blessing? What's stealing my satisfaction of whatever you've already done for me? And what is it? What is derailing me, keeping me from making it to my destiny? Because it's going to be either trauma or truly walking in the direction God wants me to go, because we can't do them both at the same time. So that's why he says, I prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemy, because he wants us to be able to stand face to face with it and deal with it. Something I wrote down on my page says, Satan has no power over you. All he can do is capitalize on your trauma. He doesn't have any power over our lives, but he can capitalize on your trauma. So he wants to identify your trauma and then go, yeah, see, those people, yeah, they did you wrong, girl. You have a right to be. He will capitalize on that trauma because he knows that if he can get you in that trauma, he can stop you in your tracks. So we've got to beat Satan at his game and say, you know what? I'm going to release this trauma. The trauma has no power over me. God was still blessing Haman in spite of his trauma. So we can't say, well, I'm not successful because God's like, no. I will still move you to success. It might be a different route, might be a longer road, but I still would take you where I want to take you. We've got to be willing to come face to face with the trauma. Anyway, that's Haman, a man stuck in trauma, not just power hungry, even though he was, not just vile, even though he was, but he was because something happened to him.
There was a root issue.
There's always a root issue. Are we willing to pull up the root? That's where we are today.
Dang. I think it's important too that we don't get caught on the blessing, because sometimes we think, well, not get caught on the blessing. That did not come out right. What I mean is what the blessing looks like, because sometimes the blessing is just peace of mind. It's not a thing. It's not a job. It's not a bigger house. It's just you being able to go, D, to this event with your dignity and peace. No anger, no hatred, no nothing. You can go and celebrate your friend and wish her well and stretch yourself on out of there and come over to my house. I'll bake you some cookies. It'll be all right.
All right, I'm on there.
You know,
so
just don't get caught on what the blessing is supposed to look like. You know, I think we get stuck in that. Well, if I do this, then God is he's gonna bless it like this. Sometimes the blessing is, and I'm preaching to myself because I have almost had a meltdown today. I had to call BJ. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but you know, we have to remember that the blessing looks like a lot of things, and sometimes it's just simple peace and simple obedience. You know, I didn't let this thing stop me from celebrating somebody else or being happy for someone else.
Yeah, that's very true. Very good. Sometimes the blessing is just being able to rise above a situation in that moment and go, God, I did it. I stepped out. I stepped over. I did it.
Yeah,
that's true.
Nikki, I saw your mouth move. Did you say something? No, you were talking to your kiddo.
No. Yeah, no, Octavia said, you know, about cookies at her house. I just said I wanted to go to.
I can mail you some. I will. But D, you and
okay.
Ryan have the same hairstyle today.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Yeah.
Ebony has it too.
Ebony always has it.
My dog has her little hair up.
But anyway, that's it. Any feedback? What are you guys feeling? What you thinking?
That was good. I needed that.
I needed it too.
Yeah, when stuff gets hard, it's my trauma that makes me, like I was just having this conversation with my daughter about when I lost my son, and I didn't understand that, but I remember saying that's when I felt the most like I couldn't trust him. So whenever things go poorly, I can see God in all his wonders and what he's done, but what sits on my head is, I remember when they told me my son had passed, feeling like, no, what have I done so bad in my life that God would take my baby from me? Yeah. And then when it was confirmed true, that's when I just felt like, okay, well, I'm just horrible. You know what I mean? And I don't deserve anything. So when anytime things get stressed, I don't stay there, but it's just it's a thought, you know? And so that thought has been there, you know, surely God won't let us be homeless. Well, he might, but you know, we'll still be cute when we're homeless, just homeless, you know? So it's just trying to confront those thoughts, those doubts, you know, that he is somehow punishing me, or, you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know if I went off on a tangent, but.
No, that was a beautiful tangent. Absolutely. There's the root. Again, Tavia used that term. There's a root to everyone's trauma. Mm-hmm. We have to be willing to look at it, identify the root, and then stand face to face with it. Take it to God. You know, I don't know if anybody heard the podcast today, but I talked about my little girl. She's stuck in trauma, you know, and she just melted down, and all she could just kept beating her head up against the wall, saying, "I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid." And I'm going, "You're not stupid," but you could just, all that trauma was just coming up, and she didn't know what to do with it. All she knew. When she was in the hallway. I'm recapping my own recap. She was in the hallway and she was just screaming, I got to see Mrs. Foster. I got to see Mrs. Foster. And everybody was trying to stop her. Go back to class, be quiet, stop. And she was just melting down. I didn't know what was going on. I just heard screaming. And I walked out and all I heard was, I got to talk to Mrs. Foster. And once I finally got over to her and calmed her down, and she was just, you know, I'm stupid, I messed everything up, you know, and just bringing her to a place of, no, you're not, there's nothing wrong with you, you know, we'll work through it. But I shared in the podcast how we beat ourselves up like that. When we mess up, It's the trauma speaking, but we go to that place. What's wrong with me? Why I keep messing things up? Why can't I? And God is saying, you're not. Something happened to you, and we're going to deal with that. But you are not stupid. You are not bad. You are not. And it was just powerful to watch her when she finally, I had to literally do this. You will look in my eyes. But when she finally started to focus and calm down, and we got everything back to normal, she got up off the floor, got her little backpack, smiled, and walked on off to her class as if nothing ever happened. And that's when I said, God, that's what I need to learn. When I mess up, when I feel like, I get stuck in my trauma, help me to be able to get myself up when you redirect me and walk on as if nothing ever happened. Yeah. That was the beauty of what, I watched this traumatic scene, but the beautiful part was watching this girl. She's just as happy as a lark, skipping down the hallway. Now she left a lot of trauma, a lot of destruction, in the wake. She had papers all over the hallway, but as far as she was concerned, she got to Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster helped her to see herself differently, which is all it was. And then she was able to get up and move on. When we get stuck in our trauma, God is just trying to get us to stop. He's trying to get us to see ourselves differently. And then he wants us to get up and move on. There's nothing wrong with us. Something happened to us. And if we can go back and look at what happened, we can see where the root of that trauma exists. God can take care of that root, but we can't keep running away from it. The more Haman moved away from it, the stronger it became. That's why Mr. Magnificent was able to be taken down by a little man, because it had grown.
Little man.
Little man, Mordecai.
That's so true. That is so true.
That is great. I'm gonna write that down. I need to remember that.
Yeah.
Mordecai.
A lot of times the little person had no power in your life whatsoever. But because of your trauma, it's exaggerated.
Mm-hmm. Picture Mordecai being played by Billy Crystal.
Yes.
Yeah. Have fun storming the castle.
That's true.
Little Jewish guy. I love it.
And who would be Haman? Arnold Schwarzenegger. No.
Yeah, probably.
The Rock.
The Rock.
I would watch it a lot.
Anyway, guys, that's it. Again, for all of these little minor characters, there's so much more to them than we think. So we have to really take the time to unpack their stories. I think there's lessons to be learned that we miss because we just take the blanket story. You got the story of Esther and Mordecai. You got evil Mr. Haman. He's just the villain to move their story forward. But God is saying, no. I work in the life of everybody. There's not a person, a character in the scripture that God isn't working on. We have to go and find God in their story. And that's where Haman's is. God was doing stuff in his life, but he derailed himself by getting stuck in his trauma.
You should rename the Bible, Book of Trauma.
Truth. A lot of truth.
Bye, Dee.
Bye, sweetie. I'm glad you made it the whole distance.
I know.
Let me know if she makes it her thing on Thursday.
I'm going to be knocking on her
praying.
door Wednesday night.
Tell her to wear Jimmy Choo shoes.
Yep.
I know, right? She needs to show up looking good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those little red soles. I love them.
Jimmy Choo. Or if you don't have some, just buy some paint like I would.
I could not afford those in the longest day.
That was a good one, BJ. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. I will be, like I said, I'm preaching on Sunday morning. If anybody is interested, I'll send you the link.
Yes, please.
I don't have it yet, but when they send it to me, I will send it out. Anybody interested? So, yeah.
You should.
I have all these very speaking engagements lined up now. It's getting a little real.
Yep.
Good. Did Oprah call you yet?
No, Cindy.
He is going to. Don't
But
laugh.
anyway, that's it. That's all I got. Cindy, I saw your note. Yeah, we can talk afterwards. I just got your text. All right, Victoria, watch your heart, whatever's going on there. Take care of yourself. Nick, it's good to see you. I saw my boy. Yes, he's getting tall.
Oh, you saw him?
I saw him, yes.
All right. I'll talk to
Tell
you
him I
guys
said
later.
hey.
I will.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Miss Cindy, did she hang up? Hey, girl, I thought you were going to stay on. I was like, she hung up.
I thought I'd call you right away. Thanks for taking my call.